Converted man here. Wow, that was a long one. Okay, so I'm having a nice little back and forth with a Francis Snowflake. What a great name that is. About my video that I did quite some time ago, called "There's No Evidence for God: Response to Deflating Atheism." And that video might need some tweaks to the wording that I had at the time. I mean, if anyone wants me to do like more formulaic video of it, I guess I could. But in that, I'm saying, there's no evidence for God, and they're saying that's a claim. And so I supported that claim with an argument. I'll read through that argument in a moment, but one of the things that they're saying is that empirical evidence would count, that personal experience would count as empirical evidence. Well, no, not really. So now I don't know what definition they want to use, and seems kind of lazy to use Wikipedia, but I'm going to use Wikipedia because I feel kind of lazy right now. You can complain about it if you want. If you want me to look at a different definition, I'll certainly do that in this Hangout. If you put it in, let me know what it is. But okay, so empirical evidence is also sensory experience. It's information received by means of the senses, particularly by observation, and documentations of patterns of behavior through experimentation. And the term comes from a Greek word for experience, empirical, whatever. Okay. Personal experience, on the other hand, is the moment-to-moment experience and sensory awareness of internal and external events, or sum of experiences forming an empirical unity, such as a period of life. Okay. So, in personal experience, the whole experimentation part isn't mentioned. And that's key here. The other part is that observation of phenomenon X, if that is something that only I witnessed and nobody else did, then there could be a question of that phenomenon depending on what the phenomenon is. If it's something odd and strange, then yeah, we need to be skeptical about it because it is weird. And so, let's say you see weird lights and you have no idea what's going on or where they're from, and there's nothing that you know of around. Well, it could be a natural thing. And in fact, there's no reason to think it's anything other than that. But if you wanted to say, well, I saw lights and therefore aliens have visited us, you could. You shouldn't, because you don't have empirical evidence that aliens visiting us is even a thing yet. So your personal experience of seeing that weird thing is not empirical evidence of that. If you think that you've seen God through a personal experience, then are you saying that God is a phenomenon that can be seen through the human eyes? And if so, then it would stand to reason we could document God through video or photo. So take a snapshot of God next time you see it. If what you mean by seeing God is I see it in my brain and not with my eyeballs, then you're talking about personal experience and not empirical evidence. One is testable, the other is not. So when I say empirical evidence, I'm referring to the whole of it, meaning not just that I see that I have a blue sheep, but also that other people can see the freaking blue sheep and know that it's a stuffed animal and that it exists. We don't have that for whatever God is that I know of. If somebody wants to say, well, here's God, here's what it looks like, that would be great. But no theist that I'm aware of has done that, except, well, maybe you could say people that worship the moon as God or the sun as God. At least they can point to that and say, that's what God is. And I mean, okay, well, I would call that the moon, or I would call that the sun, but all right, at least you could point to it. And so when I say there's no empirical evidence for God, that's what I'm saying. I can't point to God. And if you can, then you could point to God for everybody and you could document it. And that would possibly lead into us being able to know more about it. Okay, so, all right, what was the thing that I had said that I was going to read? Let's see. Okay, so no empirical or no evidence for God is a claim. Okay, fine, that's fine. Here's some facts to support that statement. Just a few. As a single person, I find no empirical evidence of a God. Looking around my house, where I've traveled to, and so on, I've never seen this thing called God with my own eyeballs. Now, as a Christian, I felt things that I would have called God at the time, but that's still not seeing God with my eyeballs. Now, as a group, collectively, humans have not put forth empirical evidence of God. There's no photos, no videos, no audio recording. There's nothing like that for God. Then there's simply no test to run on God. So, for example, prayers have been tested and they yield the results equal to what we would expect from chance. So if there's a different way to test God other than prayer, we don't seem to have come up with that as humans yet. And then I said personal experience that people have claimed to could not be the sort of evidence that I'm looking for because they could be lying. And then personal experience that people claim to is not evidence, at least that I'm looking for, because we can duplicate the result of that experience with natural methods. The God helmet is one example. There are other examples. We could also use chemicals on them to make them feel what they just felt that they called God in their own brain. So we can trick their brain into thinking that they experienced whatever, quote, God, quote, is. Well, then there's a problem there. Because how do we know the artificial God from the actual God if there is an actual God in the first place? If Joe Schmo is walking down the street and suddenly feels God, unless he has equipment with him to test whether or not there's magnetic disturbance in the area or something, or that, he got some chemicals on his body or into his brain somehow, how in the world do we know that it's an actual God experience versus that, well, it was just a magnetic phenomenon, or, he inhaled some chemicals and that's what made him have this experience? How would he know? He couldn't know. He could believe, sure, he could believe all he wants, but he could not know unless he had that testing equipment being carried around with him at all times, just in case, to figure it out, to make a distinction. Well, it wasn't that, and it wasn't that, so therefore it's God, right? Knock out all the natural explanations. It doesn't really work that way, mind you, because there could always be a potential natural explanation that we simply have not tested for. And that's a different problem altogether, but nonetheless, let's just say for, convenience of the argument, if you want, that he had everything that we could have tested and none of it recorded as natural. Then maybe at that point he could say, well, it's nothing that we know, so it could be God. Well, where's your evidence of the God, independent of that we have ruled out a number of things? But we don't even have that experimental data at all that I'm aware of. We don't have the situation, other than the few times people have gone into laboratory environments and had a God experience while their brain is being scanned. We don't have data to out in the field where people, have experiences to tell the difference between your brain having one of these things spontaneously and it being invoked artificially in some way. So how would we possibly know the difference? And if we don't know the difference, then, well, maybe it's just your brain is doing it on its own, because that's what brains do. And there would be a reason, but we might not know that, but there's some natural explanation for it. And then, of course, we have the problem that miracles are untestable and unknowable. I've already made a video on that. You can check that out. And God, whatever it is, has not made itself known to the world in such a way that nobody would disagree that that thing, whatever it is God. And that's a huge problem. So that's just a few of the reasons why I think I can say there's no evidence for God, and have that be a starting premise for an argument that I want to make. Meanwhile, he's not presenting any evidence at all, as typical as we would expect from an apologist / theist. Is I'm sitting there going, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Oh, well, but you didn't think about this. You didn't think about, well, if I say personal experience, you're going to discount that. Of course I am. And I already explained why. So what other than personal experience do you have to offer? Offer that. Still waiting. Anyways, it was an hour ago, so he might not be on, to do that. Whoops. Paused. I'm looking at God right now. Can't you see her? William Bob says. Yeah, maybe I was looking for a guy the whole time. I was supposed to look for a girl. No, I can't. Put it on camera. Take a picture. Take a video of it. Let's see what that looks like. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And that's the thing is, God, as described in most religions, is typically not visible, even when there's like a actual form to God. Like in Hinduism, there's many different statues of different deities. So even when that's the case, it's like, great, but where can I look at that elephant-headed animal, human thing, whatever you want to call it? Where can I see that other than the statue? Like in my head, if I imagine it, okay, but is it like floating out there in the universe somewhere where I could like actually go and see it? And if not, then how in the bleep did you know that this is what it looked like? Well, it told you in your head. Okay, that's nice. Can it tell me too? Can it tell all of us simultaneously? Can it tell us on a recorder so that we can know that it's actually telling us something and not that we're just, messing about in our own heads? Can it do it in a way that we can test it and make sure that it's not just our own brains tricking us? And if not, then, well, it doesn't really seem to have that much power, or maybe it doesn't care enough to do it. And in either case, it's still untestable, and we still don't have evidence for it. All right. So, what else can I say about this? The Francis Snowflake also said that it's actually possible to know that. Wait, it's not actually possible to know there's no evidence for God. No, it is. I just listed several reasons why it is possible to know that there's no evidence for God. Now, if you want to say personal experience should count as evidence, well, okay, you can say that. I disagree. I disagree that personal experience counts. It's not empirical evidence, none, by the definitions I found. If you want to give different definitions, then it might be, depending on the definitions used. But when I'm saying it and how I'm saying it, that's not what I mean, which is what's important. So if you want to interact with me on, in the way that I'm interacting, then, try to understand what I'm saying. If you're not sure what I'm saying, you should ask and say, I need a better explanation than you're giving. Okay, so what else? Let's see. Other than my one viewer, I don't think there will be anybody asking to come into chat, which is, that's fine. I mean, it's a weird time of day to do this sort of thing, I guess. Let's see. Okay, the other thing that Francis had conflated was that personal revelation is non-sensory. Well, it's in your brain, but if it's anywhere other than in your brain, like if you're saying I heard something, that could be recorded. If you're saying that you saw something, that could be recorded. If you smelled something, that could be recorded. So unless it's fully in your brain and nowhere else, then it can be documented. And then we can investigate that documentation further. If not, then it's not empirical evidence. And yeah, I would discount it because people can lie. And again, the brain can be tricked, if you will, into having these spiritual, quote unquote, experiences, these experiences of, quote, God, quote, whatever that is. So, as with from inside looking out, there's no way to know if that God experience is real, if it is even real, or just a real phenomenon that happened because of the real naturalistic explanation that made it happen. Like, how would you ever show that it's spiritual rather than natural? Or, how would you distinguish it? What methodology would you use there? And that's where the empirical evidence comes in, because it demands the testing happen. You can't do that on a personal experience. That doesn't mean that you discount everything that you experience in life. That's silly, because many and most experiences that we have throughout our lives are mundane, ordinary, normal experiences. It's a rare occasion when you have some weird experience happen that you go, well, what the bleep was that about? Was that a dream? Was that a hallucination? Did that really happen? I don't know what to make of it. And to just go from that ignorance to, it must be God, is a huge leap. And it's a leap of faith. And fine, it's a leap of faith. If you want to be honest, at least admit that that's what it is. Don't pretend that you have evidence unless you actually have evidence. And I said to the guy, I said, give me your evidence for God. Stop dancing around it. If you think that you have it, give it to me. If you're a parent, Disturbing Trend says, you can say, because I said so. Get in here, Disturbing Trends. There's that separating mind and brain again, Paul complains. Yeah, mind, brain, same thing. They're interchangeable. It means the same thing as far as I'm concerned. So either way that you'd want to say it is fine. Oh my God, I'm still sick. See, I said God, even though I don't believe in God, I can still use that word. I don't know why. I mean, might as well say farbally floop, I guess. Maybe I should start saying that from now on. Oh my farbally floop. I just coughed. I'm still sick. Probably sick because God hates me or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sick, Paul says. No, not sick like that. Well, yes, I am sick like that, but I'm also actually sick as top of being sick the other way, like in the brain, because I'm insane. Okay. All right. So making the statement, there's no evidence for God, or you could phrase that differently and say, as far as I know, there's no evidence for God. Or you could try to make it clearer, like there's no empirical evidence of God. There's no test of God. There's no valid and sound argument that I know of for God. So what do you have to offer? The burden is always and continues to be on the one making the positive claim. And to say, well, it's a claim to say that there's no evidence for the phenomenon is silly, because we can offer plenty of reasons to think that, yeah, there's no evidence for it. That's just, it's ridiculous to think that that's a positive claim that has to also be proven independently. And even if you want to do that, I gave examples. Which God? Yeah, that's another good question. Which God are we talking about? And that's the other point that I'd already brought up. There's lots of gods out there that people claim. So if God was a thing that has the ability to communicate with us, then the fact that God has not communicated to the entirety of humanity at the same time, simultaneously in every language, and explained what the bleep it is, is an indication that we lack an evidence for a God that can communicate in that way. Now, okay, so we've eliminated one possible God. That God can't be a thing. Or it might be that God can communicate in that way, but just chooses not to. It just doesn't feel like it today. Maybe tomorrow. It just crosses its arms and rolls its eyes and it's going to, I'm not going to give you what you want. You're asking way too much for me. I'm God. I don't have to do what you want me to do. Ugh, I'm not going to prove that I exist in that way because I don't feel like it right now. Yeah, you could say that. And people do say that. But okay, so then we have a God that either is unwilling or unable to give us that sort of evidence. So we've negated that one God. What else? What else can we knock down of the gods that could exist? Testing God. Can't do that. So whatever God is, we can't test it. Okay? So whatever God is, it's untestable. As well as it also doesn't talk to us and tell us all at the same time what it is, either because it doesn't care or doesn't have the power to do so. Either way, we don't know, but neither, that's negated. Okay, so then what? Well, what about a logically valid argument? Well, not as far as I know. Although theists love to pretend they have these arguments, they don't, but okay. Let's just assume we had an argument that was valid and sound. Then we could at least investigate to come to some conclusion about this thing that we're calling God. We don't have that, but it'd be nice to have. What else do you have? Well, I've experienced God. Well, great. So has Joe Schmo and Jane Doe and, this dude and that guy and that cat for all I know. So you all describe this experience in different ways, which means you can't be experiencing the same thing, which means that either there's many gods that you're experiencing, or maybe you're all experiencing things that your brain is producing for you to experience. And that's very interesting. Let's learn more about that. Do the voices in your head count as a good argument? No, that goes into personal experience, because that's in your own brain. Now, if these were voices that were being heard in your ears, then either your brain is telling you that that's what's happening and it's not really registering in your ear, because like a doctor could look at your eardrum and see if your eardrum is moving. And if your eardrum's not moving, then it would go to some sort of reason that it's in your head and not out here. So if there's audio to be heard, then you can record it. So if you hear, quote unquote, God, then, get out a recorder and record the thing. Otherwise, you're not hearing it at all. It's just happening in your head. You're not hearing it in the way that we would understand what the bleep hearing is. God ear ball. What does that mean? I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. Disturbing Trends didn't email me, so he's not coming in here, I guess. Nobody's coming in here. I think I'm almost done with this rant anyways. As you can tell, I'm sick, so whatever. Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Farbly foo. Wasn't that the word I said I was going to use? I don't know. See, that's the problem. I forgot. It's too long of a word. That's the thing. Got to find a short word. But I've said this for something else. If I say there's no evidence for a goblin, would anyone be upset about that? I don't think anybody would care. Nobody would ask me to prove that there's no evidence of a goblin. If I said there's no evidence of ogres, the ogres, there's no evidence of ogres, nobody would complain about that. Nobody would care that I said there's no evidence for ogres. There's no evidence of dragons. Nobody would care. Maybe somebody that loves dragons would care. And so I say, well, then there's no evidence for G.O.D.C, because goblins, ogres, dragons. Now you care. Suddenly now people care. It's weird because, a lot of holy books, but, I'm going to focus on the one I know, the Christian, Judeo-Christian Bible. amplifies faith. It says faith is a good thing. I don't agree with that, but that's what it says. So you have these people running around saying that, no, there's evidence for God. No, there isn't. God didn't want evidence. Otherwise, it wouldn't want you to have faith. You can't have faith if you have evidence. You have evidence of the thing. You don't need faith anymore. So you're looking at the wrong God if you're saying that there's evidence of it. Then it's not the God of the Bible. So I don't know what God you're talking about, and neither do you. And so what else besides personal experience do you have to offer? And then, of course, there's people in the church, and I was in the church for quite some time, and I've met these people, that said, I've never had this thing that they're talking about. I've never felt God. And then they go on to say, that maybe they read their Bible and they get something different from it every time they read it or whatever. There's reasons why that would occur. If you read the same thing enough times, you're going to get different ideas about it, especially when it's written in such a hyperbolic, whimsical way that, if you read poetry, you can get different ideas from it every time you read it. You might not, but you can. Is there such a thing as personal truth? Not in my book, because the word truth to me means what is really real. So what is really real is I am now talking into a microphone that's going on to the internet, that's getting broadcast on YouTube. That is really real, independent of whether anyone but the people watching now or later, if somebody doesn't watch this, obviously they're not going to know that it's real. If somebody's never heard of YouTube or the internet, they're not going to know that those things are real, but it's still true. I said, well, it's true for me, but not for you. All I've said is it's not true. And my truth and your truth. No, all you're saying is that we have a disagreement, because what's true is what's really real. So 1 + 1 = 2. That's true. That's really true for really real. And even if we don't like it or disagree with it or want to debate it or whatever, it's still true. It's true regardless if we like it, know it, understand it, or accept it. And so personal truth, no, I would never use that expression, because it's either true for everyone or the word true loses some meaning and might as well not be used. If you want to say, I believe X, I believe in God, or I believe in a spirit, or I believe in Cthulhu or whatever, fine, that's great. I'm not going to, I have no argument there. And I did a hangout where I interviewed, what was it, a paganist or whatever, and they had weird beliefs, and I questioned those beliefs, but at the end, there wasn't really much I could comment on, because it was just a belief, and they outlined it as that. They didn't try to say it's really real. They said it's a belief, and okay, so there's really not much more I can do about that. I can't tell you, I can take it apart to some degree, but ultimately they walk away still believing it, and that's where that ends. But at least they're honest that it's a belief and not something that is also actually really true. Like, it might be, but they recognize that it's a belief that they have that makes them happy. Yeah, Jordan Peterson had a talk with Harris on truth. I don't agree with Jordan on his idea of truth at all. Not even close. I think it complicates the whole matter, because what's really real is what's really real. That's what true is. So the moon exists. That's really true. We can know about the moon. We can learn about the moon. And if somebody else wants to say the moon is God, well, that's a belief. It's no longer truth. It's a belief. It's not true that the moon is God, as far as I know. I mean, maybe you have something that would prove that the moon is God, and that would be interesting. Then you have to bring that forward, but you have to prove it. Just believing it is its own like category, because we humans can believe in anything, and we seem to do believe in anything, and believe in ridiculous things. There's the was just on Facebook. There's this video. These people that disbelieve that this shooting happened at this church, and they're demanding evidence of it, which is just horrible and ridiculous, because they've come to this conclusion in their head that this has to be set up. And I go, it's interesting. On the one hand, you're asking for proof that it happened, but on the other hand, you have no proof that it's fake. You don't have any proof that shows that the pastor has been paid off by anybody, for example. So you go in there with your belief, and then you ask for evidence. No. Where's your evidence that any of this is even possibly fake in the first place? You don't have that. Therefore, you don't have evidence. You have a belief, and you shouldn't even think about asking them for evidence until you have evidence of guilt, because we assume innocence until proven guilty. Unfortunately, that seems to be wearing away in our current society to some degree, with Me Too movement and ridiculous stuff like this going on, where people getting accused is enough to ruin their career. It's like, look, they were accused. You can accuse anyone. I could say, yeah, hey, look, every president that's lived since I was born has touched me inappropriately. There, I've accused them all. Now what? So it doesn't make it true. Have you ever been experienced? What? I I don't know. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. That's a good question, Disturbing Trends. I guess we do experience each other, but we can also verify that each other exists. So, it's again, it's different than that, than what you would call the experience of the paranormal, because that's something that it seems to happen only inside your head, and not anywhere but your head. So, it's something that your brain is doing, and it's some process that your brain is experiencing, and that's all that, as far as I can determine, that's all it is. It's not anything more than that. But if you want to believe that it's more than that, okay, again, fine, great, more power to you. Maybe that's how your brain works. I don't know. And if you're honest and you say, I have faith in X, then I don't have a problem with that. But when you are dishonest, like what's his face that I'm complaining about here, Francis Snowflake, great name, by the way, Francis Snowflake. I mean, come on. Just come on. But if you're dishonest, then you're going to try to pretend like there is some proof and never offer the proof of God, never offer the proof of anything. Just complain that I dared to say that there's no proof of God. Oh, that's a claim. You have to prove that claim. I did. I proved it several different ways. So now what? Well, but you didn't take personal experience into account. Well, I discounted personal experience. Well, everything I say you'll discount. No, just personal experience. What else do you got? Do you have empirical evidence, which is different than personal experience? Do we have to go over that again? Sometimes you just wonder if they even, I said, I don't even think you watched the video, because earlier he complained in the comments that I didn't use this definition, and I did. So, yeah, or maybe that was a different comment section that I'm thinking of. I don't know. It gets muddled eventually in my head with how many nitwits I have to deal with. There's a black hole at the heart of biology. What? I'll agree with Paul. What? I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about, Disturbing Trends? He's off on his own little thing, I think. It'd be great if Francis showed up, because he was around like an hour ago. So, and I haven't gotten a message since, so yeah. I don't know. What else? What else can I complain about? regarding this topic. I mean, there's other things I can complain about, but about this particular topic, I don't know. But yeah, empirical evidence is different and distinct than personal experience because you can test one, you can't test the other. Life, yeah, Nick Lane. What are you talking about? Disturbing truth? I don't know who you're talking about. Stop bringing up things I don't know what they are. I'm yelling at the chat room. It will make sense later. Had a good number of hangouts that happened a couple. What was it? Couple days back now. Those were cool. Good times were had by all, I hope. A lot of great stuff talked about. I'm sick, so there's that. What else? What else can I? He is disturbing. Yeah, that's true. He is disturbing, and he's a trends. Yeah, I mean, I've gone over these, personal experiences that I had in my life. And here's the thing, the story is only a story when it has something interesting happen. So one example I could give that's not supernatural, but is more kind of like a life lesson-ish kind of thing. I don't know what you would even call it. But anyways, my mom would say to me, she'd like warn me warn us kids. I don't know. But she would talk about that you shouldn't say one more time. Like, I'm going to go skiing one more time, because when you do that, then that one more time is the time when you get hurt, So it would be in my head every now and then that, like if I think one more time, or if I say one more time, that I better stop whatever it is I'm doing and not do the thing, because I'm going to get hurt if I do. Now, this is what's known. I think it's known. I'm going to say it's known as this, and somebody can correct me later, as like a zero-sum game. So if I do it, then I avoid the experience altogether, whatever it is, good, bad, or other. So I've lost only the experience. If I do it and nothing happens, then that means she's wrong. That if I say I'm going to go skating one more time, I go skating and I don't get hurt, well, then that means she was wrong. That saying that or thinking that does not and cannot cause an accident to happen. But the story is that I was we did a houseboat rental as a youth group, and they had a speedboat, and they were doing people skiing behind it. I didn't know how to ski, but I did the inflatable tube behind it. That was pretty fun. We went around, and it was really fun, and I fell off a few times, and it was great fun. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's enough, and I should go to the houseboat and be done with it. And then I thought, well, I'll do it one more time. And I was like, uh-oh, I better stop now. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to stop now. I'm going to do it again. So I got back on the inner tube, and the speedboat takes off, and we go around a corner, and I get flung off into the side, and I land in the rocks, and I get several scratches on me, and it hurts. I mean, I'm not seriously injured or anything, but I'm just like, oh, I knew it. See, I should have listened. I didn't listen to what my mom told me. Shouldn't have done it, because I got hurt, just like she said I would. So now it's a story. See, it's not a story if I did it and nothing happens. It's not a story. Yeah, I went on the inner tube, nothing happened. That's not a story. It's a story because something happened. And because there's this thing that like makes it seem like mystical and magical, like, if I say this, then this will happen. I said that, and this happened. Oh my goodness. Association causation. Well, no. If I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have gotten hurt on that. Maybe I would have gotten hurt some other way. But it's only a story because we made it a story. And what if the thought hadn't popped in my head? What if I had just done it again and gotten hurt anyways? Well, then it's not a story either, because there's nothing mystical to connect to it. It's like, yeah, I was boating and we got hurt. I mean, that's a story, but it's not as interesting as adding that mystical element of kind of magical thinking. Like, well, You better be careful, what they say. When you say do one more time, that's when you stop. No. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't change anything. All right. See you later, disturbing trends. He's going away. Yeah, mind worms. That's a good way to think about that. And we have this, like growing up, step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back. Well, if you have OCD like I do, what this translates to is avoid cracks at all times, everywhere. Cracks are evil and will cause people pain. If you step on one, the world will end. That's what that translates to. So yeah, for a while I would avoid cracks. And in doing so made life difficult more than it needed to be. Until I figured out how to make that idea not work. I deliberately step on the cracks and see that nothing is happening, and then the anxiety goes goodbye. But we do, as a society, collectively put God on this pedestal. How dare you say there's no evidence of God? Well, I say the same thing for leprechauns, but nobody seems to care. There's no evidence for goblins. No one cares. There's no evidence for, magic. A few people care about that one. So who's the burden on? Well, it's always on. It's always been on the one making the positive claim, and it will always be on the one making the positive claim. We have this phenomenon that humans have come up with, evolved with, has been part of our society for a long time. And for some people, it's very important that there's a God, and for others, it's not. Okay, we know that. And we know you can have faith in it. That's great. And gonna wait until that goes away. Taking a phone call in the background. Maybe it's from God. But let's be honest about it and say what it is. It's faith. And not try to pretend that it's something more that can be proven. Of course, then we wouldn't have these cool debates that we have. Which brings me to the video that I'm going to be doing next, where somebody complains that debate is useless. Oh, that's going to be fun. Oh. All right. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys, gals, and others. Personal experience versus empirical evidence. Yeah. So I guess I'll just give this link to that guy if he, responds again, and he'll probably just not watch it because, why would you do that? You don't want. Goodbye, everybody. Lobsters exist. We can all agree on that, I think. Maybe we can't. Oh, it's weird. I have 5 people watching, but only like 2 in chat. Weird. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye. I guess. Unless anyone wants to join it. No, nobody does. Okay, bye.